And here we go. Well, hello, everybody, and good morning. Today we have with us a resilience expert, Alexi Bracey. She empowers others to thrive through life's toughest challenges with joy, purpose, and inner strength. A cancer victor and joyful living mentor, she inspires transformation through kindness, gratitude, and emotional intelligence, helping others rebuild, heal, and live fully, one courageous, joy filled step at a time. Welcome, Alexi.
Well, thank you so much. Is that intro really me?
I know. Isn't that funny when you hear your own introduction read by other people? You're like, oh, wow, that sounds really good. So, you talk about, I'm just going to jump right in. Your story is going to be sprinkled all throughout this. And I just love the fact that you focus on joy because I think so many people get stuck on that. Like I'll say to people, they'll say, well, I'm happy. And I'm like, but do you feel pure joy? And they're like, what's the difference between happy and joy? And to me, there's a huge difference between feeling joy and feeling happy. But I don't know if there is to you, but I love that you talk about resilience and I love that you put in the positivity in it, not just the muck and the like fight through, that you actually have the lighthearted, joyful concept behind the whole thing. But you talk about a resilience, being a resilience mentor. Talk about that. What do you teach?
Well, most people, not most people, everybody's going through some kind of loss or grief, trauma, maybe a health challenge, whether, it was last week or last month or last year or 5 years ago, or you're going through something now. And, people don't have the skills to bounce back and just, they sort of give up. That's why the rate of um, anxiety and depression and suicide is so high, like it's never been before, because people just don't know how to cope. They don't know who to turn to. Social media is just overloaded and they don't know what to believe. So just little tools that I provide to help you bounce back, to look on the positive side rather than the negative. Because in any challenge that you get, there's always something to be gleaned. There's always something to learn, even though it hurts initially. But, like say you lost your pet unexpectedly. Well, just focus on the joy the pet brought you. I know it's still painful, but, think of what your life would have been if you didn't have the pet because of all the joy it brought you. The same thing with a human being. Christopher Reeve said that the happiest 3 months of his life were his last three because of his um, spinal cord research. He was able to impact so many people's lives. So it wasn't being Mr. Superman or equestrian, in his trauma of how his life ended up, he found joy, he found purpose, it was resilience that helped him bounce back. And one of the key players, believe it or not, who helped him bounce back was Robin Williams. Humor, laughter,
Right.
happiness.
Right. And those are three very important things. I was explaining to someone the other day that one of my best moments, and I was kind of in a deep place, was going to laugh yoga. Have you ever gone to laugh yoga?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's
And
powerful.
and people are like, what do you mean laugh yoga? And I'm like, literally, they help you force a laugh. Like just that's how it starts. And once you have this room full of people with this forced laugh, your body cannot decipher between real and your brain cannot decipher between real laughter or imaginary laughter or forced laughter, and you can't be unhappy and laughing at the same time. So laughter is such an amazing medicine in itself.
Well, laughter's been shown to promote longevity. It lowers cortisol. It raises
Hmm.
serotonin and dopamine, the feel-good hormones in your brain. So there's just so many benefits from laughter. I mean, look at children. They laugh like, I mean, the statistics have shown they laugh an incredible amount of times during the day, and we are just minuscule. We've sort of la lost that laughter, that innocence of children.
Yes, yes. And it's sad. It's actually sad.
Mhm.
I can go out, people sometimes I love when people say, well, I have grandkids now, so I can go back and I can be a kid again and I can play on the playground and I can laugh and I can, experience that. And I'm like, well, why can't you do that without your grandkids? I mean, there's nothing. I'll go on a swing set sometimes and just like flip my head back and look at the sky and just laugh with my friends. And it's sometimes the best thing in the world. But what are some suggestions you give? Because like you said, we're all kind of in this chronic state of stress and anxiety and overwhelm. And what are some daily things that you help your people with to just feel that joy when they're feeling kind of that overwhelm?
Well, you want to raise your frequency, to one of a higher vibration, because that will promote the joy, the happiness, the miracles. And so, what I suggest for everybody is first thing in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, making eye contact, and give yourself a self hug, and repeat your favorite affirmations, whatever they may be. I'm healthy, whole, and complete. I am a magnet for abundance, blessings, joy, and miracles, whatever it is, because it raises your frequency and it really sets the tone for a better frame of mind. And get family members to do that. There's so many of us that live alone, so everybody loves a self hug. Or everybody likes a hug. So give yourself a self hug. And, do that repeatedly throughout the day because it really sets your tone on a escalating level rather than going down. Our world is so full of people blaming and complaining about this, that, or the other. I mean, that's all negative. It lowers your frequency. So, really catch yourself when you start complaining about something and think, no, I'm going to reframe this. I'll say it a different way, or I just won't say it again. Like everybody always complains about the weather. Like it's just a given. Oh, it's raining. Oh, it's cold. Or it's this. Well, just be grateful you've got a roof over your head. You've got food on the table, that, you've got internet. Instead of focusing on the negative, find something positive.
And it is definitely a practice because I know that sometimes our minds, especially if you grew up in that kind of, if as a child, if you grew up in that kind of wired for the negativity, it becomes a habit and you
Oh,
look
yeah.
for the negativity in things. And like you said, every time just stop I call it my nip it in the bud. I tell my clients, just nip it in the bud. The minute that negative thought comes in, flip it and rescript it, like you mentioned. Just give it a different meaning. I live in sunny Florida, and people, you're right, when it rains, people just dread the water, like they dread it. They're like, oh, this is miserable. It's rainy. It's 58 degrees. And I'm like, wow, I kind of like not having to wear my sunglasses for a couple days. You have to really, like you said, flip the switch. You have to. But it's hard sometimes. It's hard to get in that habit. Or do you have any suggestions for people that besides, the nip in the bud and just switching, besides affirmations, what other things do you use to really kind of try to set your whole mindset into a positive mindset?
Well, every day we're out and about, whether you have to go to work, whether have to take a bus, whether you're driving, whether you're going to get on a Zoom call, um, whatever, and really make it a point to start your conversation with something uplifting to anyone you meet. Even, instead of just saying, hope you have a good day. I mean, what does that mean? That's just so vanilla. Does that mean don't burp in public or spill your coffee? Instead, say, I hope your day is filled with beautiful smiles. Or I hope somebody gives you a hug today. Or I hope you give somebody a hug today. So give people food for thought on how they can really think of when they're going to interact with somebody, whether a stranger or not, to do something positive and uplifting because they will in turn smile. And so it feeds you, it goes back and forth. And they say that when you do something kind or nice for a person that makes them smile and makes them in a happy mood, the ripple effect is 30% to another person unknowing that you will never know.
Oh, and that's powerful. And I was just going to get into the ripple effect because one of the first words you used in this talk was frequency. And just raise your frequency because you're right, you do never know. I tell people, even when my kids were little at the grocery store, that person might not want to be excited about being 72 years old and bagging groceries at Kroger. But if you tell them to have a blessed day versus, thank you, watching the smiles light up and my kids are like, you're right. Like when you tell people you have a blessed day, or I did a podcast yesterday and her word for the year was magnificence.
Yeah.
magnificent. And she said she's going to use it as much as she can. But think about, so I tried it last night at work. I work in a restaurant and at night, and every time I was like telling everybody, I was like, well, I hope you have a magnificent holiday, or I had and I used that word
Mhm.
probably 25 times. And people were like, oh, I did. And it was like where they weren't even receptive to conversation, all of a sudden putting that like extra step of joy. And then I think that's what it did. It really made them, and when you talk about the frequencies and the ripple effect of it passing on, it can't help but do it. That's how energy works. So if
Yeah.
you have that positive energy and you give that to someone else, they're going to by default put out that positive energy. Wouldn't the
That's right.
world be?
One thing I really like doing is when I go into a store and somebody holds the door open for me, I always ask if their mother is still alive, and most times they have said yes, and I'll say, "Well, tell her she's done a good job." So they will smile, and when their mother gets this message, it's going to put a little smile in her heart too. So just little
Oh,
things, and then maybe the next time he holds the door open for somebody else, he'll remember.
mm, yeah, absolutely. You asked me when I was doing the thing about questions, and I think this kind of all ties into it, obviously, but talk about the difference between thriving and surviving and how these things of joy and compassion and humor all play into that and why it's not okay to just be surviving.
Well, surviving is sort of mundane. Every single day you get up, you have your coffee, maybe you take your dog for a walk, and then you go down to a Zoom call, or maybe you go into the office, whatever. It's sort of mundane. Nothing's different. It's all routine. Whereas thriving is making some kind of impact for another person and learn something about you or learn something, period, that you can share with other people. And so you're thriving, you're becoming a better person. We are so programmed to follow the masses and do what everybody has done. I'm an outside thinker, and what can I do to make the world a better place for me and for somebody else? What can I learn today, or what did I learn today to make a bigger impact that I can maybe use on a video or a podcast or in my book? There's always so much to learn out there. I'm a perpetual student of personal growth, and I will never stop learning. So, if you want to thrive, listen to some of the broadcasts on how people have thrived in hardships, or podcasts. People thrive even under not good conditions, but they make it to the other end. Like, for example, Viktor Frankl, he
I
still
was just going to say that.
thrived in the hardships that he endured. Nelson Mandela, was imprisoned for so many years, and for many years he just slept on a concrete floor and nobody even cared. And then he befriended one of the guards, and he was always nice and kind to all of them. So he ended up getting a blanket and a pillow. And when he was inaugurated in South Africa as the president, the bodyguard that stood beside him was the bodyguard from the prison.
Mm. That's crazy. I think back whenever you say thrive, whenever people say thrive or they want an example, I always use the Viktor Frankl and the being in the Nazi war camp and
That's right.
just he said you can't, and it's true. You can take anything from me, but you can't take my mind.
That's
And
right.
only you have the power to choose what you think with that mind. I mean, you can be defeated or you can have that thriving attitude. And resilience is something, unfortunately, that's just not taught sometimes. I
No,
mean,
not at all. You know,
it's, yeah, I had, unfortunately, I had a friend and she ended up passing in a very bad situation, but she had written a book, Raising Badass Humans. And it was a great book about emotional intelligence and just being resilient and being that thriver in adversity. And yeah, I thank goodness every time I think about her kids that her kids were raised with that background because otherwise they may not have thrived or survived even what happened. So it's, yeah, it's amazing what your mind can do for you and how you can practice, but you practice. You got to practice it.
and then just these little small acts of kindness you can do for people. You never know through the ripple effect how it impacts them. For example, one story that will just stay with me for the rest of my life. I used to take my dogs where I lived in a high rise across the street to the park, and standing on the corner was a young man having a cigarette. So I became friends with him, and he was from the Philippines, and he had come here to look after his brother who was suffering from cancer, to take him to doctor's appointments, etc. And so I'd see him every 2 or 3 weeks, and we'd chat for a few minutes. And then one day he said to me that his brother had passed, and there was a prayer circle for him at the funeral home down the street in another week. Would I attend? I said, absolutely. So when I made my way to the chapel, there were about 30 Filipino women sitting in the chapel. Made my way up to my friend. He took me up to the casket. I had never met his brother, and he explained that they're waiting to make arrangements to ship the body and the casket back to the Philippines so their mother could be there for the funeral. We exchanged a few words. I left. Then several weeks later, I'm walking down the street, and a young Filipino woman approaches me, and she says, "Were you at so and so's, prayer circle a few weeks ago?" I said, "Yes, I was." She says, "You have no idea how your presence impacted our community." I
Hmm.
tell you, this is
I get
something that
goosebumps all over my
it'll
arm.
stay with me forever. A little smile, a little kind act, not thinking, always showing respect to this young
Gentlemen.
man, and not realizing, like I said, how you affect other people along the way. And sometimes you will never know, but that doesn't matter.
No, exactly. Exactly. And you don't know. And yes, while it feels good, like you must have felt so like, oh my gosh, it feels good to do it. It feels even better to me sometimes just to know that I'm doing it. Like I have to be knowing.
Mhm.
I love when I see people wearing those shirts and on the back of it says, just know that Jesus loves you. And they just wear it and they don't see it, but how many people read that and are like, oh, and just get this sigh of relief because people are going through a lot of stuff. Now, you've gone through a lot of adversity, and I want you to talk a little bit about you had a cancer diagnosis and you beat it with your own modalities. Talk about it, your own, not medicine. Let's just say that.
Okay, well, I did change. Well, first of all, when I got the phone call, when I hung up, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that I was going to beat it. I had no idea, but I knew I was going to beat it. And so I delved into a lot of research, and I made some lifestyle changes because cancer is friends with environmental toxins found in the home. And so I got rid of the toxins. I didn't wear makeup for 2 years, and I was living on the West Coast, so I was introduced to a raw food diet, which had just hit the shores of Canada, and it was something that people went, "What is it?" But when it's 50 degrees in the wintertime in Vancouver, you can eat a cold bowl of soup. But in Ontario, when it's minus 20, you want something hot. But the point was, it was plant-based. So,
Mhm.
without medical intervention, just these lifestyle changes and a really positive mindset. I did do some emotional work thanks to Marianne Williamson's Return to Love. I had some friends come over, and we meditated and visualized myself in good health. A year later, I was cancer-free. And then, some years down the road, I was homeless, and I moved 6 times in one year. And it wasn't always a favorable situation where it was an apartment. In one situation, it was in a barn. I lived in a tent in a barn. And I've forgiven everybody that was related to any of the circumstances. It was a learning experience, and that's when actually I started doing my short videos on resilience and on happiness. Somehow innately it came up, and I still was very positive. And I don't know, I guess it's innate because I just continued. And when I went to the store, I would share jokes. That is one of my gifts, is to bring joy through joke telling. I approach strangers at the dog park, at the grocery store, at the ATM machine, and I share a joke for the very reason I said everybody's going through some kind of challenge, and the benefits of laughter. And
Yeah.
so it feeds my soul to make people laugh.
Mhm.
I don't expect anything out of it, but then they're going to go home, and the guy's going to say, I met this crazy woman at the dog park. She shared a joke, but it was really good. And the story repeats.
So give us a joke.
So again, it's a ripple effect. Okay, so let me think here. Oh, okay. So a guy goes into a bar, and he orders 3 beers, and he drinks them one, two, three. And the bartender says, the beer goes flat really quickly. Why don't you just order one, drink it, then order another one, drink it, and so forth. And the guy says, well, yeah, he says, except I made a pact with my brothers that when any one of us are in a bar, we drink like all three of us are there. So that's why the three beers. Bartender goes, yeah, makes sense. So he becomes a regular, comes in every week, has his three beers and leaves. And then one week he comes in and he only orders two. And the bartender says, oh, you have my deepest sympathy. He says, oh, no problem. He says, my wife and I just became Baptist, so we can't drink, but that hasn't stopped my brothers.
I like that. That's cute. That's definitely cute. Yeah, no, jokes are so, so powerful. I used to teach first grade, and like every day we had the joke of the day, and somebody was allowed to
Oh,
tell a
wow.
joke. They had to okay it with me first, but then they could get up and, during our special time or whatever it was, we always had every day we had a joke of the day.
Oh,
And
that's
I just,
awesome.
yeah, I just thought, well, in teaching first grade, because I knew I could see there was a lot of kids that had gone through kind of the same life I went through, and I could just see the unhappiness. So I did everything kind of like you said, the hug yourself. We did a group hug every morning. We did affirmations. This is 30 years ago. Um, we did a big I am wall. I am lovable. I am kind. I am this, and we
Wow.
yelled them out every day. It was violently loud and so overpowering sometimes, but it made them happy. So, yeah, and I look at that and I'm like, why don't they do that in every class? Why don't they do, that's we talked about things. We had a magic mailbox where people could anonymously put in questions and problems, and we talked them out. And it was just that was kind of my way of teaching that emotional intelligence, getting to talk about it, getting to show that there's no judgment. We don't. It was just a really a neat experience. I love teaching first grade actually. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, jokes was a huge part of it. Laughter, having fun. Um, so that's awesome though that you beat that diagnosis. And there is so much study now too about the whole negative mindset and the cancer thing. I mean, they've
Oh,
shown
yeah.
that people, you know, my best friend had, she's going through breast cancer, and I remember asking her, how much of your breast cancer do you contribute to or attribute to the fact that you just went through a horrible divorce? And she said 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And then a doctor came on and he was talking about how many women have a break or, a bad relationship and it manifests as breast cancer because your breasts that's a sexual quote unquote organ. You know what I mean? It was like it's
Yeah.
all connected and that's where the energy is held. So the more positive energy is, and again, it's hard when you're going through adversity, but you have to just train your mind and try so hard. I can remember people saying to me, you mentioned living in the barn. People have said to me, I don't even have a place to live. I'm like, but but you're alive, like you're living. Let's start baby steps. So talk about gratitude. Or do you have a practice that you use for gratitude?
Well, definitely, you know, when I go to bed at night, well, either write in my gratitude journal, but before I really go into a sleep, I go over three things that I'm grateful for that happened that day. And there's always something to be grateful for, in spite of the fact that maybe initially it may be negative. Like for example, you broke up with that guy and you're really heartbroken, but you meet Mr. Wonderful, who's even better. You didn't get the sale of that house, but you find a better deal. You didn't get the job, but a better opportunity comes up. So always find something to be grateful for, even though you may not know why it was a negative thing, but be grateful that, okay, Lord, this happened and I don't understand why, but show me why I should, what's the lesson for me to learn? There's
Right.
always something, there's always something to be grateful for. Just the fact that you have food on the table, you have a bed to sleep on, you've got water, that maybe you have a car, that you have internet access, that you have friends, that there's always a plethora of things you can be grateful for.
Yes. And turning those affirmations, if it's hard for you to like visualize, like why is this so good? Then, or, some people say think of yourself as, saying I am abundant, I am doing this, but just I am thankful that I'm on my way to a better life. I am
Oh,
thankful that
that's
I'm this
lovely.
and just anything. and put yourself in that feeling. I think that's a big part of it too. Like you said, you used a lot of visualization. You could visualize yourself healthy and happy and
Right. Marcy Shimoff has this really great affirmation. She says, I promise to live in the miracle zone with all my heart's desires.
mm, I love that
Because
because that
miracles
just
do
sums it all
happen.
up.
Miracles can happen unexpectedly, and many do.
Yes. And also like you said, when you I assume kind of my mantra or my thinking all the time is everything is happening to me for the highest good.
Hmm.
So yes, like you said, I might a good example is I fell when I was at a big Yankee game with my son and I tore 5 ligaments in my knees at one time. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, how upset are you?" I'm like, "I'm not because I've been wanting to write a book and I'm now out of work for 3.5 months. So I'm going to write my book." And it was immediately, I didn't cry. Well,
Hmm.
I did cry a little bit that day, but it hurt. But you have to think there's a reason. And I remember my son said to me later, you've been wanting to write this book and God has been telling you to slow down and write the book. Now he just finally said, "Freaking stop."
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
it, you talk about looking for a message. That was definitely a clear message, but it's great. So talk about how you work with people. I know you're a resilience expert and coach and mentor, and talk about what your program looks like.
Well, I have so many different modalities I touch on, that not just like the affirmations or the visualizations. I'm a heart math resilience trainer and heart math practitioner. So, people it's beneficial for people to learn how to breathe deeply in stressful situations. It could be before you're going into a meeting, when you're cut off in traffic, when you just had the bad news. It's just about breathing in and breathing out. But like you breathe in a positive affirmation and you breathe out another positive. There's different variations of it. So you can
Right.
do breathe in for 3 seconds with the affirmation, breathe out with three, or it could be five or whatever. So say for example, um, you're going to be late and you're sitting in the car and you're cut off in traffic. Just breathe in. I breathe in resilience. I breathe out contentment. I breathe in patience. I breathe out joy. I breathe in positivity. I breathe out thankfulness. Make up your own words. Even when you're walking down the street and maybe a neighbor yelled at you because the dog pooped on the lawn or whatever, same thing before you're going into a meeting because you messed up on something and the boss wants to see you. You know, you can just step into the bathroom for 1 minute and do the breathing exercises. So that's one thing because everybody can use it. um, Practicing mindfulness for people, just daily random acts, not just the joy or the compliments or whatever, but really being mindful on how you talk to people. That's when emotional intelligence comes in. You don't yell at a person or something. I'm really upset because blah 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 instead of, oh, you stupid, blah blah blah. It's just,
Right.
but a lot of it has been the way we've been raised, the same thing. And then your daily exercises on forgiving yourself for things that you maybe regret or maybe you hurt. So, there's a whole thing into dealing a little bit on trauma, on how to deal with them little exercises to overcome them. Nothing deep. I'm not a trauma expert in with certification, but I can do a little bit. So just to give you a few nuggets for gratitude and to forgive yourself and to forgive others because, they did the best they knew how. And I really like the four agreements, be impeccable with your word, always do your best, don't take it personally. And I can't remember what the fourth one is, but sort of practicing those positive modalities of being kind to yourself as well as to people out there, and learning how to forgive the other person that really traumatized you or hurt you or embarrassed you or whatever. um, don't hold grudges against them because they don't know. They did their best they knew how, and maybe it's part of their past coming through their spoken word to you.
Yep, absolutely. And I do a lot of too with my clients is, breathing in that positivity and that affirmation and then breathing out anything that doesn't serve you anymore.
Hmm.
So because that's so like because like especially the holding a grudge or the not being able to forgive, it gets you nowhere and you got to get it out of your body. So
That's right.
it's
Again, it's
so
frequency. That's right.
hmm absolutely, absolutely. Wow, this has been fun. So do you do group coaching or how do you work?
I work primarily one-on-one.
One-on-one? Okay.
And I treat, I work with the person, not with their diagnosis,
Mhm.
because, well, for various reasons, but I really want to get to know the person. And so I do personalize the program. I have a set program, but I personalize it based on what I know about the person and then, streamline it accordingly. And I've had some beautiful results with people immediately noticing the change. It's just your mindset that really impacts you and, the affirmations, the positivity that, I'm going to do this. If you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're also right. So,
Absolutely.
and just, give, let them think of an example where they overcame some kind of challenge, just to give them the thought that, yeah, I can do it. I just maybe forgotten the way of sidetracked, but I can really do it and I'm going to do it. I am going to do it. I am strong. I am resilient.
Perfect. Perfect. And what is the best place for people to reach out to you? And I'm going to put all this in the show notes. So you don't have to tell us all, but yeah, the best place, easiest to if they're driving and they just want to remember something, and then they can go check back at the show notes for all of your links.
Well, they can go to LinkedIn or they can go, they can always text me or telephone me. I do welcome telephone calls.
Okay.
And
And LinkedIn is just your name, Alexi Bracey.
yes, that's
And
correct.
Facebook is just her name, Alexi Bracey. So she
Bracey,
kept it
right,
simple so y'all could find her.
right, exactly. And the price of admission for anybody that wants just a real quick nugget is a joke.
Oh, you have to tell a joke?
Well,
Okay. Yeah,
I won't hold you to it, but
that's awesome.
because
That's
it'll make
awesome.
you feel better too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We used to buy those calendars every year for my dad, the little dad jokes, like the
Oh
calendar
yeah,
dad jokes. And my kids always bought them for my husband. And every day we're like, oh, like we'd sit to dinner and now it's like kind of the joke because we'll repeat ones that are like 25 years old that we remember just telling. And I'm like, oh, dad joke from back in the 80s. It's pretty funny. But this has been super fun. But before you go, well, first of all, thank you for coming. I
my
appreciate you.
pleasure.
And second of all, if you had to give the audience who is at every single stage of feeling, whether they're just overwhelmed or just curious or brand new to the healing or have been in this whole gamut for decades, what would be your big picture best words of advice or words of wisdom from Alexi Bracey?
I am worthy. I can do it. I am a victor.
Mm, I love that. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I don't have anything to add to that because that sums it up, guys. You can do it. You are worthy. You are way, way, way more than enough right here, right now, as you are. So thank you so much, and we will see you back next week.